at 5, but I want to come in.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Support Dr. Bender.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi. How are you today?
Good. Doing good.
Good.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Dr. Tillman.
You can see that minute.
Thank you.
Okay.
How are you, Dr. McLaughlin?
That's Farah McLaughlin.
Sarah. Hi.
As a student.
That's my wonderful niece who will be doing your introduction. Yeah.
Oh, wow. What an honor.
Yes.
What an honor to have you here.
Unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted right now. Can you hear me?
No.
Farah.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes.
All good.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine. It's a pleasure to meet you.
A pleasure to meet you as well. Thank you so much. It's gonna be a fun day. We're gonna be talking about love. Hi, Yvette, Dr. Asanga. Hello to Asia and Jaden.
Jaden and Makiba.
Hey.
Hi, hey.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you.
Hello.
So as soon as we start getting rolling for today, I'd always like to, if you don't mind, I'd like to post a poll. Am I allowed to do that, Dr. Indy?
Oh yeah, no, you should do that. You should be able to do that. That's fine.
Let me see if I can do that right now.
When you start, you could just, if you're doing a poll, you could just click the link and you send it on the chat to everybody.
Okay, yeah, it's not showing me the same screen as what I usually get with the traditional Zoom session, but that's okay. I can just kind of ask for people to raise their hands. That would be fine too.
Okay.
Thank you so much, by the way, since we have a second, for you helping and hosting with the session. I really appreciate it.
That's okay.
Hi, Professor Ashley. Hi, Dr. Fishkin.
Hey, how's it going? I look
Good.
forward to it.
Hello.
Hello. Just lovely to see so many of our CIS people kind of hanging out.
Yeah.
Talking about love before the end of semester, which is something that's always a refreshing break, right?
Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Ross.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, so sorry I never responded back to your email. I was wrapped up in that conference that I was at.
It's okay. I feel like it's conference season.
Yeah.
It's our national conferences next week, and then I have to head over to Wisconsin right after for Turkey Day. So spending some time with family after that convention is over. So glad to be accepting lots of good things on behalf of Tuskegee. So happy about that, but looking forward to it.
You enjoy that.
It's Seattle, so I'll try. It's gonna be cold. Hey, Jalen. Well, Dr. Indy, what a lovely turnout, and it's 4:30 now, so shall we get started?
No, let's give a few minutes. That's fine. I'll
Hey, Jordan, thanks for joining. Hi, Dr. Nkuma. Hello to Ms. Robinson. Hi to China. Hello, hello all around. Ms. Williams. I hope.
Hello.
Hello, I hope you're having a great day. Hello.
Let's give in 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to start. So it's a minute. Let's have a few more people coming. Okay. I think we can start it. And I would first of all like to thank and welcome everybody in the call. My colleagues, my students, TU students generally, and members of the Tuskegee University Interdisciplinary Seminar Series. Just a debrief of the Tuskegee University Interdisciplinary Seminar Series. It is a seminar series that was earlier on the initiative of the Department of Modern Languages, Communication, and Philosophy that later on spread to become the College of Arts and Sciences Interdisciplinary Series, and then it morphed into the university wide interdisciplinary series. And during this, we give opportunities to our professors, to our research scholars, to have a venue where they can present the fantastic work they do besides teaching that most people do not know. It is an opportunity to exhibit the works. At times, people bring ideas, the nerds to present at other conferences, and they get the feedback from here. So it has been picking steam. I know since COVID, we have been going just virtual, but I hope we'll come back to normal when we could actually meet in person, fill the auditoriums, and have the speakers interact with the audience. So I'm not going to waste a lot of your time talking. For today's presentation, I will let our biology senior, Ms. Farah McLaughlin, introduce our speaker for today. And after which we will be delighted to hear the speaker. And after the speech, there would be a session for Q&A. If you have questions, you could drop it as a text, or you could raise your hands after the speakers finish talking, and we will read out the questions. So Ms. McLaughlin, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Jennifer Bender is an interpersonal and health communication scholar with expertise in subject areas of communication in close relationships, nonverbal communication, and business and professional communication and ethics. She received her doctoral degree from the University of South Florida in 2019 and is currently working as an assistant professor in the Department of Modern Languages, Communication, and Philosophy at Tuskegee University. She works directly with the University of South Florida as well as with the College of Medicine at USF's Center for Advanced Clinical Learning and USF Center for Advanced Medical Learning and Simulation, where she trains medical students on patient-centered communication practices. Additionally, she works in the community as a licensed certified caregiver for young adults and geriatric patients that have disorders such as Alzheimer's, Down syndrome, Asperger's, and autism. She is a member of the National Communication Association, where she serves on the President's Task Force, the Central States Communication Association, and the Florida Communication Association. She is a journal reviewer for the Kentucky Communication Journal, and she also works directly with several student organizations on Tuskegee's campus as a faculty advisor. Let us welcome Dr. Bender with a round of applause.
Thank you so much to my colleagues, my friends, the staff, and the faculty who are here today. This is one of my most exciting times that I get to have because I get to talk about one of my favorite subjects. I love love. So today we're going to be talking about some love stuff. And with that being said, I want to give you the opportunity and space to, for sure, ask any questions. But I first and foremost would ask all of us to give a little love to Dr. Indy and to Farah for everything that they have done just for the introductions and putting all of this together. So can we please give them a brief round of applause? Thank you so much. Really, really nicely done. Thank you, team. All right, thank you. So in the chat section, you're welcome to answer or to ask any questions that you would like to, but I would love to engage with you in conversation. So I'm going to share my screen, and then what you're going to see here is a lecture on nonverbal communication. And I actually want to start, this is like 40 slides long. So I really want to start at the beginning of relationships. And I kind of want to work my way through as we go and answer anything that you have along the way. But I really want to give, more importantly, time for conversation as we move into the end of the presentation. So I'll make sure to give you an opportunity to answer, to ask any kind of questions that you have about attractiveness, or even moving into end-of-life palliative care, which basically means end-of-life communication, geriatric communication, so kind of how to cope with those. But I also want to talk too about attractiveness and puppy love. So as we move forward, you're going to see quite a few slides here regarding just attractiveness. So we'll start at the very beginning, which is how I like to timeline this. So when we're talking about attractiveness and the halo effect, I want you to pretend like there's an imaginary halo, like right over the top of your head. Okay, so when someone who is reaching out to you sees you for the first time, they have about 7 to 10 seconds in communication to non-verbally judge whether they like you or not. So when we think about the halo effect, they might look at you and be like, okay, well, you're super attractive, or you're maybe not my type. And we'll go into this in a minute. But one of the things about the halo effect that I find particularly interesting, it's when you first start the relationship where everything seems like you're so interested in that other person. Makes you look like an absolute angel. You can do no wrong, do no harm. And so that halo just shines really bright above your head. You're just the perfect person. Now, traditionally, this lasts for about 3 months in a relationship. So you've got plenty of time to try and make sure that you advocate for that relationship. But around 3 or so months, and you can raise your hand now if you've noticed this, around 3 or so months, attractiveness can kind of fade away. So if you ever seen a relationship that attractiveness falls kind of off to the side, and you see the halo effect pattern take place, they're not an angel to you anymore, you start to doubt them, I'd like to see some hands in the air because I love participation. So let me know what you think. I've got a couple of people who are already like, yeah, yep, been there, seen that. So when we're thinking about attracting, and the numbers keep going, so attractiveness and the halo effect are really just that essential part where you're kind of crazy in love. And so I love this part of relationships because it's so exciting. And one of the things that I'll talk about in terms of attractiveness is you get these crazy chemicals and the four frontal cortex of your brain. So the frontal lobe, basically. And so I'm doing a little bit of psychological work here, psychiatry work too. So you're looking at norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine. Those are the three major love chemicals that situate right here at the very forefront of how you think about your loving relationships. Most of what happens later in life takes place in the back, which makes sense because as you're first in a relationship, then some of the other things move to the back of the screen. So that's really important for us to think about when we're attractive or attracted to other people. It basically like smacks you right here in the front of your face. So that's the halo effect right there. And that's where all those chemicals just go fiery and you become angelic and just like mystified by another person. So that's a big, huge part of how we think about attractiveness and then how we communicate about the halo effect. One of the problems here, though, is once we find people to be not so attractive, all those chemicals start to disappear a little bit, right? So we don't anymore have some of that same feeling. So it's a little bit of a roller coaster ride. So you start here at the very top where you're feeling all of those chemicals and you really like this person. They're beautiful to you. They can do no harm. There's no shame. And then there's that slight little dip. But here's the good news. Even if you go through that little downslide, the good news is that eventually, if you're together long enough, you'll come back to that same norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine kind of feeling where you're back right at it. And it's sometimes it takes almost 10 years or even more to do so, but you have a lot of people who will experience the halo effect right away. But that same level of love that you felt when you're first falling in love eventually does come back to people who are able to sustain their relationships. So I always really, really like that statistic because it makes me optimistic that, you know, if you're in it for the long haul, that you have a lot of people who are around who might actually be able to, you know, be with you for a long time. So I'm seeing some hands coming up in the air and I'm going to save the questions to the end, but I'm seeing people who are, I'm sure you have a lot to ask, but that halo effect typically tends to be all of those chemicals firing, and those same levels of chemical that fire also take place the longer you go through the dips and dives, roller coasters of your relationship, and tend to exist no matter your circumstances in the long run. So the halo effect, it's like you're being a teenager again in your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and even beyond. So I really like this stat. So how long does it last? The halo effect is, I said, typically about 3 months, but it could be only as shy as 2 weeks. And this is the time where you seriously think that your person, the person that you're interested in, can do no wrong. Like there's nothing they could do. They're wonderful. You want to talk about them all of the time. So we think about this when we're in very early relationships, but as we move into communication, we talk more about communication in later life. These kind of things are differently affected. So think about things like direct messages and how social media might play a role here, and kind of some of the things that you have experienced on your own in terms of how the halo effect might have influenced whether or not you stuck with somebody or you decided, gonna let them go. So typically about 2 to 3 weeks, but could go up to about 3 months. All right, is the halo effect, that little halo on top of the head, problematic? No, not necessarily. So a couple of things that happen here with your communicative relationships with another person, and you could think about this in the context of family and friends as well. Do I want to be around them? Do I want to stick around? Are they a necessity to my life? Are they giving me positive feelings? Is it problematic? No, not really. So if you have that sustainability with your relationship, you can create an idea about somebody, but they might not live up to it. We get that. Like, we've all been through a disappointing relationship. So I know I love to ask questions whenever we're talking or we're having like these sessions together. Raise your hand, don't be shy, if you have ever been in a relationship that disappointed you. Ever been in a relationship that was disappointing to you? You got a heartbreak, a bad friendship. Yeah, lots of us. Yep, and my hand's in the air too. But one of the things that we really benefit from in having some of these halo effect relationships where we're just so emotionally involved is understanding that this actually helps us in developing conflict in our relationships. So one of the things that I'll tell you right now, conflict in relationships is not a problem unless it's abusive or excessive. So conflict typically tends to generate conversation and communication that I think is very productive. So as we're thinking through this, I know that as a communication scholar, you might, be like, okay, well, where are you going with this one? Sometimes with communication, we're talking about that sense of, I have to talk to you about something. And when you're going to talk to someone about a conflict that you're having, it could be a productive conversation. And so it could actually help us understand our relational style. So I do have some resources that I'd be happy to share in terms of your conflict style and also your love style, because there are different things that scholars before us have kind of proven to be true. And I'm trained through the Gottman Institute. So this is one thing that lie detection, nonverbal behavior, those sorts of things are really important in helping us understand the benefits and deficits of having conflict in our relationships. And then also whether or not that makes good sense for us to have a sustainable relationship. So we'll talk more about that. Okay, now we're headed in a little bit of a different direction. So how do you find out if you're attractive? And this might not necessarily be for everyone because some of you already have partners, but you could still want to know a little bit about whether you're attractive or not. So there's something called the phenomena of attractive privilege. So there are certain qualities that make someone more attractive, and they typically tend to take place just through nonverbal communication. So I had the privilege of having a very lovely introduction today. So nonverbal communication is one of my expertise. So that means that within 7 to 10 seconds, if you miss this, walking into the room, you are typically judged in that time frame whether or not that you want to be fired, hired, or if someone likes you. So that could be something to consider. So if you're attractive right away, there are some perks. However, what qualities make you look better? We're going to go through a few. Now, I always like to take a temporary pause because this is just how I operate. And I like to do a Jen's joke time. So I have a little question for you. How does a cat like his steak cooked? If you have a response to this, I would love to see it in the chat. How does a cat like his steak cooked? Any ideas? Okay, I've got 2 participants raising their hands. I can't see it in the chat, Dr. Indy, but I'll give it. Oh, here we go. Let's see what we got here. Okay, Jordan, you're very close. Good. All right, Jordan, Mr. Holt got it. It's rare. Okay, so this is one of my really bad jokes, right? I love making really, like, we call them dad jokes. I love doing these, but I have another one for you. So Jen's joke time, and there's a reason for this. I'm gonna break it up for you. Why does Snoop Dogg carry an umbrella? Why does Snoop Dogg carry an umbrella? Jennifer Ross got it, for drizzle. So the reason why we have these kind of jokes is because funny people, non-verbally, they get more attention. They're also looked at as more attractive. And if you're not funny and this is not your thing, then don't worry. You could obviously see, I wrote here, I'm married and my jokes suck. So this is just kind of one of those side notes, but funny people really are tended to be more appreciated, approachable, and expected with a little bit of tension, because you always have that pressure to be funny in order to make a good joke, which is why I don't mind my really awful jokes. But either way, you'll figure it out. And I'm willing to answer questions about that as well. Okay. So some of the things that we talk about when we talk about attraction, and also maintaining attraction, because like I had mentioned before, many of you might be already engaged in a romantic relationship. You might have a partner. We're more attracted to people whose faces we're more familiar with. So if we see people who look the same cultural, ethnic background, that sort of thing, then we're likely to find them to be more attractive. Same being said, the more you see someone, the more likely you are to find them attractive. So this is really likely why, if you're working in a small space, that you're often very likely to connect with people who not only have the same interests as you, but also are doing the same work as you, and then also physically in the same space. And I know we're in COVID, so I'm hesitant to say that, but if you're in the same space together, it's more likely that those people would be attracted to you. These are all familiarity patterns, and they tend to situate themselves with how often you communicate with another person. And I think that this is really important as a stat, because we like people that we can get to know, and we like people that we're around a lot. So when we're talking more often, or when we're seeing them more often, we might change our mind from seeing them as, maybe I didn't know about them at first, but now, okay, we got some connections here. So that conversation, that communication, as I always go to and deflect to, that would be a really prominent thing that we like to think about in familiarity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some pictures. And one of the reasons why I'm showing you this is because I like to talk about mediated communication and who we find attractive as opposed to who we don't. So I'm going to show you a series of photos, and the first time I go through these, I'm going to go very quickly. And what I would ask for you is for you to think through, and you don't put it in the chat, I just want you to think through this. So the picture of the person who you think is the most attractive. Now, I want to very, very be cognizant of the gender here. So I only selected pictures of women from diverse populations. So let's test this. And I did not select pictures of men just for the sake of having a comparative analysis, but let me show you some pictures here. And I would like you to think about, who do you think is the prettiest? So we're going to do a popularity contest. And also, while I do this, please note that every single woman in these pictures has given me consent in order to show these photos. All right. So here we go. And just think to yourself, who would be the prettiest person? And if you have a reason why, you're welcome to put that in the chat, but I'm not requiring you to be like a beauty pageant judge. So here we go. There's one. Oh, sorry, let me go back. There's two. 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So now I've moved this around a little bit so that you have the different versions of people that you've seen before. So I'm going to give you a little bit more extended time to think through who is the most attractive as opposed to who's the least attractive, And this is based off of your relatability. Like, could you have a conversation with this person? There, okay, so here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and we're back to 1. So the reason why I like to do this exercise is because I really truly think that the eye contact and the verbal and nonverbal expressions that are being taken place in each photo really give you an emphasis on whether or not you're attracted to another person. And I'm not saying that in the context that you have to be relationally attracted in terms of a romantic relationship, just in the context of you get to see what other people's eyes, their facial expressions look like. You can see whether or not they're being genuine. So I always go back through just one last time and then try to justify like who is looking the way that they do and why they do it. So these are the folks that we're talking about today. So I'm seeing that Marielle McDonald says 6 seems most positive and fun. And then I also, you know, some of the biggest indicators of attraction, we've already talked about being in close spaces together, but also similarity. So we're not just talking about similarity in terms of physical traits. We're talking about similarity in the context of similar interests. You like to run, you like to bike, you like to hike, you like to fish, you like to go to sporting events, you like baseball and softball, or you like volleyball and basketball, or you like the same kind of food. You're a vegetarian, they're a vegetarian. So the similar interests that they have are huge indicators of attraction. So it seems kind of obvious, especially when we're talking about communication, but these are the things that you break down when you're having an initial conversation with someone. And so I think that it's very interesting to discuss, like, what was it that drew you to someone else? And one of the biggest things that is my favorite question to ask is, how did you meet? And how did you know? Right? Like, what's your story? I love this part. And then when you tell me your story, it's usually about similarity and how close you were together. So it could be you both met in New York, or it could be both that you met in Tuskegee, or it could be that both of you have the same love for a cat, right? Like, whatever your proximity and similarity is makes a huge indicator in communicating attraction. All right. So as we move forward, the other thing that's really important is timeliness. So when you meet that person, or you meet that friend, or your family member, just being, I'm not saying attraction like you're attracted to a family member, just likely to be wanting to be around them, what the time is like. So if it's a chaotic time, we're coming up to the holiday season, might be a little stressful for mom, grandma, whoever else is around. That might be a little bit like, I want to stay away. But it also could be a time of bonding. So you could think about timeliness in terms of who you want to situate yourself around, but also the timeliness of where you're at in your life in terms of romantic relationships. And that could be something like, well, we're both in college, or we're both, you know, we're retired and we're moving on with life, and we found each other that way. So that could be good. And then we also have, well, we've got each 2 kids, and I've got 2, you got 2, and that seems like the right time. Let's see how this works. And there maybe like age differences between children. So a lot of different things go with attraction. So including timeliness, like how situated are you with your time? So women, and I'm doing a little bit of gender stuff here, so mind me, because this is not for everybody. And I am a big advocate of thinking about gender-like styles, which is written by Deborah Tannen. I'm thinking through like women versus men, Mars versus Venus, right? Like that kind of mentality. I have some opposition to this, but I always like to introduce it just because I like to talk about gender differences that tend to be repetitive, and we've seen this for some time. So you can read through here, women are more likely to be on time than men. So if that's something that kind of irritates you, that might be a turnoff. And then vice versa, men, if your potential pursuer is someone who's really on time and they're like, well, texting you and like, where are you? Like, why am I here and you're not here if you're up for a date? And that could be problematic as well. So thinking about timeliness and just really respecting each other's time is a really important concept. And then also women are more on time because we're socialized to be more punctual, even though it takes us more time to get ready. So I would love to see a show of hands. If it takes you, raise your hand for me, please. If it takes you more than 10 minutes, ladies, to get ready in the morning. Okay. Yeah, quite a few of us women together. All right. And then gentlemen, tell me, does it take you more than 10 minutes to get ready in the morning? Raise your hand. Okay. Okay, so we see a differential here. So even though it takes us a little bit more time and emphasis, timeliness is really important, but being on time, however, does actually make you more attractive to the other person that you are trying to get together with. So this is a communicative thing. Timeliness is actually called chronemics. So this is one thing that I love to teach. It's a nonverbal communication pattern, and it's actually an expression of time. And so when you value someone else's time, this is what we're talking about. So you really want to be respectful of other people's time. And when you are, it makes you look a lot better. So one thing to think about, especially if you're on the dating scene. All right. Now this one, I get a kick out of every time. So we're going to a little bit more gendered stuff, and you can agree or disagree, and I'm all right with that. And this is clearly, like I said, gendered, but men tend to rate themselves as more attractive than other men. Then women rate themselves as more attractive than other women. So women tend to see themselves as not so pretty, and men try to pedestal themselves and try to be in a sense of self-bias. And this is really interesting for me because I feel like these stats are changing, but a self-bias, just so you know, is where we tend to rate ourselves as smarter or more attractive than other people. And I'm going to give you a fun fact here, just in terms of self-bias all across the board. 80% of people in the United States think that they're smarter than everybody else. I want you to situate yourself with that for just a second. So if you are in a room and you look around, that means that 4 out of 5 people might be, as the stats show, dumber than you. So the self-bias really does pull through, and it shows us how attractive that we think we are as compared to the actual statistics. So self-bias can be really a problem, especially in your relationships. So when we're talking about love, if you're going to be an egocentric person where you're talking about yourself all the time, you might find yourself attractive. Boast that confidence, but don't let it go overboard, because a lot of people are already competing with you to think that they're smarter and more attractive than you think you are. So that's my precautionary measure. And then also, when we're talking about things like power in relationships, women tend to use way more words than men. And ladies and men, raise your hand if you feel like this might be the case, that women tend to use more words than men. This is anonymous, by the way. I'm not seeing who's answering. Okay. So our language, especially communicatively, it's often excessive, and we're just trying to make sure you're listening and hearing us when we're talking. But the problem is that most of your communication is anywhere from 85% to 90% nonverbal. So you give so much information away. And I'm going to tell you a super secret tip. When you're thinking about nonverbal communication, everybody always thinks it's the eyes. I can give it away with the eyes. You can a little, but the eyes can lie. If you want to know in an interpersonal interaction, that means like a one-on-one or even a group interaction, whether or not someone is engaged in a conversation with you, look at their feet. wherever the direction of their feet is pointing is going to be a great indicator of whether or not they want to run away from the conversation, or if they're pointed toward you, they want to stick with that conversation. So this is a lot of the stuff that we kind of think through, but kind of don't acknowledge. Another thing that I like to talk about too is if there is a gap in the conversation, what I always see people do in interpersonal interaction non-verbally is if they're nervous or uncomfortable, they'll take a sip of water, or they'll take a sip of whatever, Gatorade, whatever they're drinking, right? So you're giving that away, but some people don't pick up on that. So the nonverbal interactions here are really important for you to recognize. So pay attention to the feet and pay attention to the sip of a drink. And then also pay attention to where their chest is facing when you're talking to them. So say, for example, I'm talking to you right now. So I'm obviously on a Zoom call. So my chest is facing towards you. But if I turn away and I'm looking in a different direction, that might mean that I'm not so engaged in the conversation. So that might be something for you to consider, but also pay attention to their feet. Now, if they're like moving around a lot, fidgeting a lot, that's also an indicator non-verbally. And this could be a semester long session, but that could be an indicator too that they don't want to be in that conversation with you. So lots of different little tips and tricks that I'm trying to give you while we're in this session together. All right, so about listening. People who listen to music together, this is a fun one, are likely to be more intimate and find each other more attractive. So one of the things that you could do if you want to assuage your partner or even have like a good interaction, keep your earbuds, headphones off, keep your like any kind of technology off, and listen to music together. So I think that this is a really interesting one. And then also having a shared song is a really cool thing. So I love this one because especially for those of you who are married, I love our wedding song. So every time we hear it, we just stop everything that we're doing. So yeah, that would definitely be something that I would be really encouraging you to do, is to share a song together, or at least have that connection in that way. But also know that if you do break off the relationship, might be a little tough to hear about that song again. So be very cognizant that you don't want a song that you love too much if you have to break things off. So don't share a song you love too much, unless it's, for your wedding or something very close to your heart. So as we're kind of coming to the Q&A session, one other thing that I wanted to really cover, and I have so much information for you, but your quick facts about your body and your nonverbals. So thinner people tend to physically get closer to people who are also thinner. And the same has not been proven for people of larger body sizes. So this could be an interesting element. And this is a nonverbal communication act as well. So the average space between people who are talking one-on-one is typically about 4 feet. For those who are of larger body sizes, it tends to be about 5 to 6 feet. And then we also have the physically closer to people who are thinner tend to be within 3 feet. So that's something to consider as well. So that could increase your idea about what nonverbal communication looks like when you're embracing an interaction. Also, if you have tattoos, and I'm not trying to turn you off here, but people with more tattoos are less likely to be attractive, not attracted. So that means that attractive and attractive or attracted are 2 different concepts to people without tattoos. So if you have tattoos, then it's really likely that if the person that you're trying to see, or and this is all demographics, you might not be attracted to someone that does not have tattoos, and vice versa. So the more tattoos you have, you might pair up a little bit more with people who have tattoos like you do. And on the opposite spectrum, people that don't have tattoos, they may not be attracted to people who have tattoos. So cognizant of that. Also, same thing goes, keep in mind body piercings as well, but I didn't talk about that in this presentation. I have to stop our presentation here because what I'm particularly interested in with this very large audience, thank you so much everyone for being here, but now I want to open this to our Q&A. So we have about, let's see, about 20 minutes. So I will open this up to any feedback that you have. I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to give you some time for some Q&A. And then let me know what do you want to know about love? Just ask your question. Dr. Indy, do you mind?
Are you asking me to lead the question?
Yes, please. Well, I'm asking
All
if
right.
anybody has a question, if you could just
Well,
monitor the session so that we can make good sense of our time.
all right. No, it is interesting. The presentation, very rich. And, you know, even as a communication specialist myself, I would say I have learned a whole lot. I've learned a whole lot. And even just learning that communication and love is a branch of discipline, that is something that gives us a lot to think about. And the fact that most people take, especially nonverbal communication, for granted. They think it is all about gestures. They don't think about the tone of the voice. They don't think about other aspects that you've highlighted in your rich presentation. I think it is really wonderful. I'm just excited with the attendance, and I hope everybody has at least something to ask to enrich us. Questions. I see Alicia has a hand up. Alicia, you have the floor.
Hello, yes, I had a couple of questions. Firstly, because I know you mentioned like fidgeting, that can be an indicator that somebody's like uncomfortable, but I was wondering how those like studies account for people who may have like ADHD, OCD, and like it's natural for them to fidget, but they still may be interested in the person they're talking to.
I am so loving, Alicia, that you're answering that or you're asking that question, because I'm a certified licensed caregiver. So I work with a lot of people with Down syndrome, autism, Asperger's, who necessarily don't always have the same appropriate, I'm not going to say appropriate. I'm going to say that very different nonverbal cues that we would give off. So I'm really grateful that you're asking this. One of the things that we have to be cognizant of is always understanding, especially with nonverbal behavior, what someone's baseline is. So this is something that you have to develop over a sense of time. So even when you're trying to do something like lie detection or thinking about fidgeting, you have to know what their background is prior to how they answer their questions. So this is a really astute question, and I'm very grateful that you asked that.
And then thank you so much for answering my question. My second and last question was also like, do you think that societal norms and like societal biases have a part to play in some of these studies? Because I know you mentioned, for example, people who are thinner tend to gravitate towards people who are thinner, people who have tattoos are less attractive, and likewise, but we tend to see that those people fall in, like people who are heavier, people who have tattoos, piercings, skin color, that tends to fall outside of the beauty standard norms that we've set within our society.
I'm so glad you asked this one too. So this is a really lovely question, and absolutely 100% yes. I think that if you were to look at different areas of any country, you would find that tattoos are more of the norm, right? Or piercings or that sort of thing. So this is a very, if we could duplicate these studies, which I hope someday in communication, I would love to be able to do. But right now we just don't have the resources to try to supplement that. But I do think that the existing research has been replicated several times. It's all American-based studies, and so it's not a whole lot of like interdisciplinary anthropological studies, which I work very closely with as well. So I really feel like if we were to duplicate some of these, especially in Eastern countries, African countries, even, geez, we could go anywhere in the world and duplicate these studies and get different results. But what we're pulling from right now is the existing data. So that's kind of where I'm standing with that one. And my job is not to, I'm not a therapist, so my job is to only present the data that's provided. So I'm giving you the overview. So I really hope that with legs on this research, that means you take it and go. This might be an area of interest for you. So it could be a good potential for publication, or even just give us some exposure and see what you find out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, let me come in there. I think we have a few questions in the chat. The first question came from George Morris asking, do you think most guys are bad listeners?
No, I think most people are bad listeners. That's my general opinion. In all of the work that I've done, you've heard like in one ear and out the other. And that is typically the tendency that we have right now. So I get a little laugh about that one, but no, I don't think that's a gendered thing. I think it's very much a cultured thing, especially given that we've been going through COVID, and it makes it a little bit harder to situate ourselves in a place where we can have enough focus for a little bit of time. And what I've found in communication studies is the average student tends to listen with active listening. That means you're fully engaged for anywhere from 5 to about 8 minutes. And then you have to kind of switch the framework and go to a video, or you switch back and forth. But I don't think it's a guy thing. I think it's an everyone thing. So in general, I would just, for you, George, I would just say, sometimes guys can be bad listeners, right? But we're all in the same virtual space where it's kind of hard to stick in there and make sure that we're good listeners. But regardless, there's research behind this. So if you want to talk more about that, I'll put my contact information into the chat section for everybody, so you can contact me.
All right. I see Dr. Esunga's hand up, but Dr. Esunga, before you take the floor, let's attend to Dr. Ashley's question. Dr. Ashley says, I was going to ask about mood and circumstance, but you mentioned knowing baseline, which is interesting. I wonder how much this sort of thing comes up in research. How do we identify this sort of thing in strangers?
Okay, so Dr. Ashley is asking a multitude of questions, which I find very interesting. So when we're talking about mood, when you establish a baseline for someone's communication practices, typically you understand if they're in a bad mood and then kind of how to address it. But I would say knowing particular baselines, wondering how much this sort of thing comes up in research. This is also a really interesting question. I'll give you an example. I have done nonverbal communication research studies since, oh my goodness, about 2006. And one of the ones that I found most interesting, because I was trying to do a research study on relational partners and their nonverbal tactics, I had them in my office and I was asking them questions about their nonverbal interactions. And the more I asked them about nonverbal, the closer they started like working toward each other in a good way. And they started holding hands and they started to be like, yeah, like stroking their hair. And I'm like, okay, we're not going to get intimate in here, but part of this is, how do we identify this thing in strangers? It's really difficult to do that. And a lot of the problems that we have are making sure that we're familiar with the population that we're working with. So for example, if I'm working with, I'll give you one specific. If I was working with the population of a deaf community, I know the difference between this, that's like, thank you. And I know the difference between that. Right. So this is a completely different gesture. So understanding those research differences, and you can ask me about that and I'll explain it to you. But anybody who teaches or knows about like sign language would know what I just expressed. But really establishing a baseline, not only from a nonverbal scale, but also to how people are talking, taking their space, taking their time, taking their breaths. You got to know all of that before you're willing to identify what this looks like in a stranger or in your research. So understanding your participants for sure. And then I see Aisha Harrison. Thank you very.
I think Dr. Esunga had her hand up. If you're done with that, with answering that question.
Yes.
Dr. Esunga, and I have a question on chat after Dr. Esunga.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Andy. Dr. Bender, thank you so very much for a great presentation, really. Okay, I have two questions, very quick ones. First, how do you define love? What do you put into the construct love? What does it have? Does it mean I'm happy when I see you, or I hear Puccini when you enter the room, or I see the sky or the angels? I'm not, or I want you to give me all your money. I don't know, because Dr. Ben is here and he knows I'm Cameroonian and we tend to be bad women. But anyway, so please help us understand love. Second, what happens if you quote unquote love someone and you really don't see them with something angelic of sort? Does it mean you love them less? I don't know. First of all, what is it, love? So
Well,
that's
let me go backward. Let me go backward for you, because what I was talking about with the halo effect, my answer to you is even if you don't see that halo effect that I was talking about, it still means you could love them. They don't have to be a perfect angel. And then in terms of how we're talking about love and relationships and communication, honestly, this is up to you. I mean, this is your identification of how you feel about someone else, and what you qualify as love is totally your choice. So I'm not going to give you a definition because I can't. I just cannot give you a definition of what love is. For me, it comes in all kinds of forms. And I've got, another presentation that I would love to give about Eros and Agape and Ludos and Storge and like the different kinds of love styles. But I can't tell you necessarily what love looks like for you in your own life. So I'd be happy to share that information as well. And also, Dr. Indy, I'd be happy to present that as well, because love styles are something that everybody always wants to know about. So I would love to do more love, but Dr. Asanga, I don't have a good answer for you about what is love. Like, there is no concrete dictionary definition. I think it's more of a feeling, and it's also, who makes you comfortable and makes you feel like a sensible person. That's my personal opinion. And then, yeah, there are a lot of components to what love looks like in different venues too. So the diversity, familial love, pet love, puppy love, right? Talking about like interpersonal love. Like, I love my students, and so that's another form of just, love in general. So I don't know. I think it's your interpretation for the most part, but we also know that one of the greatest forms of love is the agape love, and that's the godlike love, which most human beings will never understand because we are not God. So recognizing that agape love is the most genuine, pure form of love with no conflict. So that's one to seriously consider as almost an intangible form of love. So again, different forms of love, but I hope that answers some of what you were trying to get at.
All right. I see we have two more questions, but before I ask the questions, I want to take an executive privilege here. First of all, to acknowledge the presence of two of our most supporting deans in the call, Dean Prakash and Dean Hill. Please, we thank you and welcome to this call before we continue with a few minutes of Q&A.
Thank you so much to both of our deans. I'm so honored you're here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. We have a question from Tiona Williams, who is trying to find out, how do I deal with friends having an issue with bringing my partner around, even though he doesn't come around that often?
And I say, I understand that I have to set time for my friends, but sometimes I want to spend time with both my friends and my partner together.
Yes.
This
Yeah.
is an interesting dynamic that you're working with, Ms. Williams. So this might be a little bit of a problem in turn. I'm not going to try and problematize your relationships, but it could be a little bit of a situation for you that you're kind of navigating right now. And I think that very clear expression of communication in this situation, and I'm not a psychiatrist, right? I'm not a psychologist, but given the research, if you're having these very early onsets of issues with people that you're working with, especially friends and somebody who is an exterior partner, it's very likely that your friendships, they feel like you're not probably likely around as much as you used to be. So they might be craving some time together, but you also need to have that negotiation and balance and just have a candid conversation about it with, you know, maybe with all parties involved, but just even one-on-ones could be a good thing. That would be the research that would supplement the best practices from here.
All right, let's try to round up really quickly. There are two questions which I'm sure you can see. Do you think it is possible to cheat on someone and still love them? Very
Yes,
quick,
of course.
then we go to the next.
George, that's an easy one for me. Yeah, you could cheat on somebody and you can also still love them. It's really not, I don't encourage it, obviously, but you clearly, you're asking the question because you want to know if they would still care about you, which I think is the communicative part of what we're talking about today, which is, can I still love somebody? Can they still love me, even if there is some kind of infidelity in the relationship? Absolutely. However, I would just be candid, humble, and honest with your conversation regarding that infidelity, and make sure that you're very careful to supplement everyone's feelings involved and not try to hurt anyone, but you already did a little bit of hurt if you cheated. So just make sure that you're very careful about where you go with this one. So you can email me and we could talk more if you'd like.
Okay, thank you. Let's address Dr. Gephardt's question. Then the other questions, Antoinette, you might want to take an appointment with Dr. Bender and she would give you an answer to your question. So Dr. Gephardt is asking, how much control do people really have over their nonverbal communication?
Okay, so first of all, Dr. Gerhardt, I know that you're asking about nonverbal communication and how much control. Very little. That's my answer. And then Antoinette, yes, let's please talk about this. And I do teach a class on social media and nonverbal in the spring. So if you're interested in that, please let me know. But we do talk about apps, social media, nonverbal transactions, online interactions, the benefits, and all of that good stuff. So this isn't the first time, I'm sure, that you and I will talk. But again, I'll put my contact information in here for you. And hopefully we'll be able to connect in that way. But you're more than welcome at any point. For all of you, thank you so much for being here. I'm just elated for the participation. Thank you for being here and participating, asking questions, and I'll stick around just for a minute or two. Very, very grateful for every single person who took their time, especially right before our final week. We really, really are grateful for everyone here. So thank you so much.
All right, maybe I'll seize that opportunity and maybe call on Dean Prakash or, and Dean Hill to say a word. Dean Prakash.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dr. Bender. This was This is truly a very interesting topic for all of us. And I, like they say, you are never too old to learn something new. So I did learn something a lot, and we always need this kind of help from professionals like you. I do thank you for appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dean Prakash. Always appreciated. Thank you so much.
This is Dean Hill. I'm looking forward to the next lecture. You just promised the second phase. I'm going to invite my wife Jill to join in, and we'll try to learn together about love. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dean Hill. More than welcome. Please bring your friends and family. I'm more than happy.
That's good.
Thank you so much to both of our deans, to all of our participants, and thank you for Dr. Indy. Thank you everyone who has been here. And I'll stick around for a few minutes in case anybody has some follow-up questions before my next meeting.
All
you,
right.
Dr. Bender.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jalen, Jordan, thank you.
Have a good night, Jen.
Thank you, Garrett. Thank you, Walter, Desmond, Mohammed. Thank you, George. Thank you for your questions. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Ms. Farah.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.